What's up, guys? Welcome to the Score eSports podcast. I am Josh Burry, your erstwhile host. In the studio with me, we have Daniel Rosen.
Hello.
And we have a special podcast guest today. Besides the actual main guest, we have Keith Capstick with us.
Hello.
And the reason that we have Keith with us today is he's here and he wants to talk to TobiWan about the International. And that's what we're doing today, is we're going to be speaking with TobiWan about all things international. As you guys know, it's coming up pretty soon. I think Toby's about to leave. I see him packing his bags right now, actually. It's cool that he can make time for us. But yeah, it's going to be a great show, and it feels good to be back. I've been out of the game, the podcast game, for too long.
Josh has been called in for one more job.
This is it. This is my last job for the Yakuza, and then I have to retire or whatever. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Toby on. Toby, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Condolences. Retirement party. Score eSports finally gets rid of you. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I have to cut off my pinky and all that. So I'm really looking forward to that part.
That's actually a weird thing that the Score eSports requires of everybody. You either have to cut off your pinky or commit ritual suicide. It's why a lot of people just stick around.
It's just the wrong finger, though. Like, you could cut off a different finger and then wear an Assassin's Creed gauntlet. Like, why the pinky?
That's actually a great idea. I haven't even thought of that. I was continuing the Yakuza theme, but sure. Yeah, the gauntlet is a really good idea.
Yeah. But if you cut off the pinky, it's not really going to be a hidden blade. It's going to be a very exposed blade.
That's true.
Yeah, it's extremely exposed blade.
Yeah.
I have to, Toby. I have to relay a message. I know Colin McNeil can't be with us right now. But his spirit.
The way you said that.
Colin is not dead. I promise, Colin's not dead. He is off living a glam Hollywood lifestyle of filming videos. But he did ask me to relay a message and demanded, he threatened me with the pinky cutting and asked me to make sure that we ask you if you saw our Best of TobiWan video.
I did see your Best of TobiWan video. I also was watching the casters versus casters from different game types, and I highly disagree with the community's results on that one.
Yes.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
Didn't you know Dota's #1?
But so just because Dota is the best game, they must have the best caster? Is that what you're saying?
I think he's saying that Dota has the best
we
cast.
have the best casters. That's why we're the best game.
Ooh.
That's how it loops around. If you have the best casters, therefore it's the best game. Gameplay is irrelevant.
It's just the most hype.
Yeah.
Well, then that would...
So we don't need to script our content like other games do.
Ooh, shade.
Whoa. I don't know if we were judging.
We just thought we'd fire off some shots before TI.
There you go. I mean, if I was
then
judging,
I'm out of the job, right? Because everyone gets fired at one Dota event or another.
if I was judging a community by only its casters and not gameplay, though, I mean, it'd be hard to not go FGC, right? I mean, that's pretty hype. Fighting games. No sport.
Fighting games casters are very unique, and I always think they have a swag factor that doesn't exist in a lot of the other games. Because how many games can you actually have like real beef on stage like you got in fighting games? There's just something that's so entertaining about that. And I don't know, it's almost too prim and proper in the top 3 esports. Like it's like original StarCraft. Back when Casper was like, no, you're not allowed to show any emotion when you win or lose. So you can't be a good winner and you can't be a good loser. You just have to be neutral. It's like, no, bring back the beef.
Well, there's plenty of beef, as we saw last weekend for sure. So, yeah, but we're not here to talk about fighting games, even though I think a couple of us in this room would.
I could hijack this certainly, but I don't think I'm supposed to.
Yeah, so let's talk about Smash tournaments.
Yeah, let's talk about the new Smash game. We'll talk about all the rules that you could put for them. I really like this new Final Flash meter.
Artifact is actually the new, we all thought it was a card game. The stuff that Zyclops leaked was all incorrect, and it's actually a fighting game.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Windrunner is a Rekka character.
Really?
Yeah. Windrunner does Rekka.
Who's got the Fireball game though? Who's got the spacing game in the Dota 2 fighting game?
The only Fireball game I know is the drinking game.
It's Lena, by the way. Lena has the Fireball game.
Lena? Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Anyway, we're actually here to talk about TI. We're actually here to talk about Dota, which is, I guess, related to Artifact. Dota, the prequel to Artifact.
I wonder if that'll ever be Like, you almost worry about that with the way that, like, WoW and Hearthstone is, right? Like, maybe one day WoW's dead, and Hearthstone is like, it's like, yeah, WoW, the prequel to Hearthstone. And then if you play WoW, you're just like, oh. Hopefully that never happens.
WoW 2's going to come out, and then all of a sudden Hearthstone's going to die because everyone goes back to World of Warcraft.
I mean, everybody's going back to World of Warcraft right now because expansion's coming out, Toby.
Are they? Are they really?
I mean, somebody in this room has 2 weeks off to play the new WoW expansion. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, there are people excited about it.
Is 2 weeks really playing the new WoW expansion? Is 2 weeks really enough?
I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should just go full-time WoW. Maybe I should just quit my job.
Because if you're like, oh, I can get through World of Warcraft in just 2 weeks, I think you don't understand World of Warcraft.
Well, I've been hooked on World of Warcraft since 2004, so I
think you understand World of Warcraft.
This is just the very tip of the iceberg. These 2 weeks. It's just to get to myself ready for the whole expansion. So.
All right, but what you, I guess, Toby, are now getting ready for TI. I think you mentioned that you're leaving soon, right? When are you heading out?
I fly out on Sunday morning.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll be there a couple of days before the group stage begins.
Heading out to Vancouver. We are Canada, so we consider it all part of us, even if we're on the other literal other side of the country. We just consider it just all, this. You're coming to us to a certain extent.
We are going to Canada. We're going to Vancouver for the first time in however many years. We're not going to Seattle. Because Key Arena was done, like redone somehow.
Yeah, they're renovating.
Renovated. That's the word I was searching for. Commentator, short of words.
I remember last time we talked, you mentioned something really interesting about how you feel like TI isn't particularly international in that it's always in the same place, and now finally going somewhere else feels cool. Is it still kind of? Yeah. Obviously, you're going to Vancouver now, but do you feel like it's going to be weird if at the end of the tournament rolls around, it's like, all right, we're back in Seattle next year, guys?
Yeah, I'd actually be really disappointed if that happens. It's like, hey, we finally broke the Seattle lock. Let's bring it elsewhere. Let's bring the game to regions where the player base is still stronger. And I say that in mass numbers. You bring something to Europe, bring it so a Russian doesn't have to fly into America or Canada to actually attend TI. Find a way to just bring it closer to everybody. I'd love that to happen next year.
But I mean, it's definitely frustrating, right? But at least people are coming, and it is kind of shocking how many people show up and fly in for TI every year. And I guess where we wanted to start with kind of the big question, because it's something we've been talking a lot with this summer is always like the eSports season, where we end up with Evo, and we just had Overwatch League finals and Evo and TI and League Worlds, and then at the end of it we're gonna have the major in the summer. And I kind of want to ask what you feel separates TI from all these events, right? We have every world championship happening within the span of 4 months. What makes TI the special one, right? Because it's the one we all really stop and go, holy crap, that's TI.
Well, I kind of don't know if we can really compare everything that happens right now. I feel like a lot of the top 3, top 4 esports which are out there, if we're now going to include Overwatch, thanks to Overwatch League in the top 4, still question. Everyone kind of does their own thing. Overwatch it's a big show kind of hey, we're all on mainstream TV and this is what we've really been building and this is our first final season. We're going to try and make as much hype about this, but hire a different DJ next time. Then you got League of Legends, who is very, very similar to Dota, where League of Legends is about the size of the show. It's about how grand can we make our big final and how much can we build up to it. And they do it in a very specific way, where it's team versus team, then team versus team. It's not what Dota does, which is a big 18 teams all into one location. And then of course you got CS that has its tournaments throughout the entire year. But Dota kind of always has this this is the pinnacle of the calendar year. Our calendar, we don't care about financial, we don't care about December New Year calendar. The Dota calendar, this is it. It's got the biggest prize pool, it's the biggest collection of teams from around the world, and it's the largest prestige. So no matter what happens, at least in the Dota scene, this is always the pinnacle. The world always looks, because it always has the highest prize pool. Now that Fortnite's kind of announced more as a general prize pool, hey, maybe it won't be for much longer, but you never know. But for now, it still is labeled as the biggest event that happens monetary-wise, as well as respect-wise, and it's Valve's baby. It's Valve's biggest thing. There's no ValveCon, so you've got TI.
Right. Well, So I just wanted to jump in because I'm relatively new to TI and to Dota. I've been working on this project for over a month now, and I wanted to get your perspective, like as kind of a newbie learning about TI. So in comparison, like obviously all of these different esports have like pros and cons to their big event, and you're saying that TI is kind of this pinnacle, and to me it definitely, like after doing the research, it definitely seems like the pinnacle of esports events. But from my perspective, it seems like a lot of teams and careers are judged by performance at TI. Like when I'm working on a project about NA League of Legends, and then I try to compare that to Dota, I think to myself, would NA League of Legends, like would that quality of play even matter in Dota? Because they're not competing for first and second at Worlds, if you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah, it was a big problem actually in the Dota scene originally, because originally there was only TI.
right.
And TI came out when it had a $1.6 million prize pool for TI1. And the nearest prize pool to it was $30,000, which was in Warcraft, which was the Razer Global Challenge. And then actually the tournament which I was part of, which was the Defense, which happened for the first one in Dota 2. And it was still $30,000. And it was very, like, nothing mattered except for TI. And it took like 4 years before Valve's like, okay, maybe we should try and counter this. And then they started putting in the majors, and they ran the majors themselves. And that had definitely its ups and downs, but it was their idea of trying to space out the attention and the prestige so a team didn't just rock up for the final event. Then the major system was modified, so now we have the DPC, so the Dota Pro Circuit, which is undergoing another change next year as well, to limit the amount of events that are happening. And this is kind of like that whole spread out prestige. Everything still builds towards TI because you need to have your World Cup. You need to have that big moment. But you want to try and ensure there's enough moments that are worth tuning into throughout the year that your scene keeps momentum up and running. And yeah, it is a little bit of a clusterfuck when it comes to TI. Like, you got a lot of teams that are attending. You got a lot of teams trying to prove themselves, and you reach like everyone reaches the playoff bracket. No one's out from group stage. And if you're in the upper bracket, you lose 2 games and you're out. If you lose the first round of the lower bracket, which is a best of 1, you're out. So it's very, very punishing. Teams like OG are probably the greatest example of, hey, we thought these guys are going to do well. They just won all the majors, and then they lost their first 2 rounds in the playoff, and they're out. And that was the end of the OG run. But this is something which I know is intentional, because it creates the dream storyline. It creates the storyline of a team like Wings, who kind of come out of nowhere. Like they came from the open qualifier to play, and they didn't get all the way through. They only got into the wildcard matchup when they attended TI. Then they won the wildcard, and then they went on to win all of TI. And people were just like, this is amazing. And these are the storylines that happen when you bring a lot of teams together all at the same time. It's just the underdog who can actually win it all, which is a lot harder when you run this very structured process to qualify for the very final matches. Both have their own advantages, both have their own disadvantages. I'm still not certain which side I'm on about it. I almost feel like there's too many teams at TI. But then you get that unbelievable storyline. Like, I wouldn't have had that without all these teams at TI.
Toby, I want to ask you, you talked about the pro circuit, and I feel like at least part of the intent of the pro circuit was to create like a greater engagement with Dota esports throughout the year. There were more events. There was a lot of Dota being played.
Yeah.
Do you feel like last time we spoke, you were not a big fan of the pro circuit?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there are some positives that the DPC has accomplished this year?
There's definitely positives in the fact that you, like, this year definitely, because there was more money, there was more events coming into the scene, so there was more infrastructure that was actually being built up. So that part was great. Like, we saw so many casters getting more opportunities. We saw so many teams being able to actually take a title, which no matter how it turns out, even if the title's a small one, it still looks good on your resume. And these are the type of things that I think really allowed tier 2 teams to gain momentum. Like there was a lot of money in the scene as well. I think it was something like 19 million or $20 million actually came from the minors and majors collectively. I think VP won like 3.5 million or 2.5 million from their season. Like there was a lot of money flowing into Dota teams, and it allowed for a lot of build up in the teams. And so the positive point is almost the negative one coming up for the new version, because Valve announced there's only 5 minors and 5 majors, which effectively removes about $10 million worth of prize money from the scene if they don't up the prize pool.
Right.
So, yeah, but that's a whole different problem in itself.
So I want to ask about that, because we have like, I feel like there is, I started, when I got this job was basically when I started to have like paying attention to Dota, which was like 2015, and that was right before we started having the 3 majors and TI system, and when we had third-party compendiums, and all that is slowly going away and being stripped away to the point where now, like, especially next year when we only have 5 majors and minors, like, the financial incentive is TI and basically nothing else. And I'm wondering, is there a concern that it's like there's no money for you if you don't win TI now?
Definitely not. There's still a lot of money that comes through the DPC itself. So throughout the year, like this year, it was fantastic for all teams. Next year, if Valve do it right, but because we don't know what Valve do because they haven't published any details about it, but if Valve actually give money in for every qualifier position, like they said they're going to give DPC points to every team that attends a minor and a major to avoid the absolute debacle that was the DPC points at the end of this season. So if they do the same type of thing with prize money, there's a lot of money that can actually go into the teams, and the teams will not fall apart. Like the minors is probably one of the greatest places to look, because no team that attends a major can attend a minor, right, unless you win the minor and then you attend the major back to back. And this is a really cool thing, because it ensures that the money is being spread out. It ensures that there is a maximum amount of teams that get DPC points every single block of minor major, and no one is exempt from actually competing in this, because what they're able to do is they can qualify for the major to begin with. They don't qualify for the major, then they can play in the minor. The qualifications don't overlap, and that was one of the biggest problems that came out of this season of the DPC, was the fact that everything was overlapping, teams were totally overrun, and they couldn't take time to stop and develop their strategies, stop and actually think about what they're going to do, and then too much content became an overload, and we were dangerously tilting on the line of StarCraft, whereas like everything is out there, everything is so good that everything is now nothing, because we're just nulled to the effect of it. So the new system could definitely work if Valve if they get the details right. And that's the critical thing, and we haven't seen them yet, so it's hard to judge it.
Makes sense. So before we start diving into the past, because I've got a couple questions about the past, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening at this TI, and I want to ask like who you think looks good this year. I know Liquid's actually looking pretty strong, and there's a potential for them to be back-to-back champions. But who do you like?
It's actually kind of funny, because every talent out there right now is putting in their predictions. So like inside of our compendium, we're actually putting our predictions out, and there's 3 teams that everyone's putting in, and it's VP, Liquid, and LGD. They're the critical ones, and most people are saying LGD is going to win, mainly because it's tradition.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tradition that a Chinese team wins on every even year. On every odd year, it's a Western team that wins. So a lot of people are just like, well, who's the strongest out of China right now? And it's definitely LGD. But we don't know what meta is going to play. And personally, like, I think Liquid are strong, but they're then fighting 2 different things, where there's been no back-to-back winners, there's been no dual winners of TI, and they're not a Chinese team. So it's like, maybe you're battling too many odds against you on that front. And I just like the way that VP plays. I think VP have gained enough experience over the course of the last, I want to say like 2 years, and I think their sync is even stronger now that Lil has left and Rogers joined their team, that for me, it's virtus.pro's year. It's also CIS's year not to choke. Like, we've had teams like Team Empire and virtus.pro in the past come in, and they're like, oh yeah, we're so strong, we're so good, and they're destroying all tournaments. They come to TI and they can't win jack. It looks so bad. But I think this VP team they're different, and I think they actually have enough to go the whole way, and they're the ones I'd have the most confidence in. Especially as the team announced today that they signed long-term contracts to the end of 2019.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. Like, obviously, the organization seems pretty confident in them too, like to do that.
Yeah.
And that's. What do you think about the new color scheme? While we're on, it's shit.
Yeah, actually having a debate about this earlier today, and there was actually a guy who talked about this he made a LinkedIn post about it, and talked about like what makes a brand really, really strong, and a lot of it is like identification, and because a sponsor comes in, you change your colors. It's like OG. How many people just knew the phrase like bleed green, like because there was like you bleeded blue or you bleeded green, especially when OG versus EG, like it was like it was a great battle, and then they're like, oh, Red Bull's gonna sponsor us, so we're gonna take the same color as a Red Bull can. I was like, yay. It's great you guys are getting money and can be more sustainable, but like, just keep in mind that what happens about all those people who bought your jerseys, especially when VP does this 1 week out from TI, how many people are sitting there looking to fly the colors of virtus.pro and they don't match their heroes on the stage? It's a dick move for a lot of people that believe in the brand. And I really like I'm kind of just against sponsors having this very invasive way of sponsoring a team. Okay, you put a logo on a shirt. Yeah, this kind of stuff happens. But having to change the names of teams, like how you have those title sponsors they call themselves, and then you're like, well, like you're Red Bull OG. I don't think they actually did that one, but like there's groups that did that. Navi G2A.
Yes.
I remember I got a message about Navi G2A, and I was told in the middle of a cast. I actually got sent a message. This was in the early days of Dota 2, and I got sent a message saying, "Excuse me, can you call our team by the correct name?" I'm like, what? and it's like it's Navi G2A, and I'm like, fuck off. Very very simply, it's like if you're really a title sponsor, you can show me the company name where you have literally gone into your actual company, like your company registration, and changed your name to this. And even then I will still question doing it, because it just means that you're willing, like for money, you're willing to do this, like you're willing to basically destroy your brand. But it's more than that. It's the person who comes on and sponsors a brand that's willing to bastardize it in a way to get them exposure. And I feel like it's an injustice to the fans of a team. It's an injustice to the stability of brands, which is it's a thing that esports needs. It needs to have like brands that survive over a long period of time to create legacies inside of the brands, because you need it in the brands, because the games don't always live forever. The games normally live for a maximum 10 years, and then you're moving on to onto a new version of it. Things like Dota, obviously, we get to have legacies that drag back all through Warcraft, but most people don't even remember those anymore at the end of Dota 2. And the same type of thing will happen if there's a Dota 3 or whatever is our next transition. So the team brands last forever. People know Liquid. People know Fnatic.
Yeah.
Like, I will never forget the CS VP team, because these guys stuck together for so damn long. Like, these are brands that just don't die when they're handled properly. And to see big brands like that get just like, bastardized is still the best word I have for it. It's sad.
Right.
It's really sad.
Yeah, and I mean there's always this conversation about like legitimacy and creating a sort of ecosystem in esports that rivals like kind of the structure and consistency of traditional sports. And I think those names and the legacy that's associated with them is like an important sort of step down that path.
Yeah. I'd love to actually see what would happen to the marketing, the PR department when a sponsor comes on board. Let's just say like Real Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Mercedes coming in there, and they want to do the same thing that they did to ESL1, where it's like we want a Mercedes logo everywhere, and every single color must be our template. Like, okay, so Real Madrid, like Mercedes gets sponsors. It's like, well, okay, we want our logo instead of players' names on the back of the jersey, and because where everybody naturally looks, so it should technically be the best marketing position. And then if someone agreed to doing something like that, you'd be like, wait.
Yeah.
And for me, like when I see something like that, like it's the same type of thing. Like you're changing the white and orange of VP, and you're putting in, I don't even know what colors, lime, like
I don't know,
vomit green.
Is it lime? It doesn't look very. It's like a weird forest green.
It's infected vomit. I think that's the best way to describe it. Like it's like you can't even say like a snot, because like it's not like snot could come out clear. That's infected snot. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the new color scheme myself. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's not the same color scheme we have anywhere else, but it's like, maybe you consult a graphic designer on this one.
Maybe it wasn't anywhere else for a very good reason.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think now, just before we move on to more TI stuff, is there any other color change from an organization with this much history behind it? Like, I just can't think of anything.
LGD had PSY.
The PSG LGD.
Yeah, PSG, sorry. PSG LGD is now there. That's kind of different, though, because it's Paris Saint-Germain. Like, it's like a huge club.
Right.
So it's a merging of the clubs together. So that is the only time where I'm like, okay, that's fine, because there's a club name and a club name and then an amalgamation. So that's fine. But LGD still keeps their red and white logo, and then the PSG logo sits underneath it. So it's still like, okay, we're together, but we're not destroying each other.
I'm gonna hand off to Dan here, but I just want to echo before I do that. The title sponsor thing really frustrates me too. I remember the longest time, I think it was G2 Kingwin.
Yeah, G2 Kingwin.
G2 Kingwin on everything, and it frustrated me so much because it's like I get in CS where they have like a sponsor in every. This used to be really common, where like every player on the team would have one sponsor at the end of their name, a different sponsor at the end of their tag, so they'd have like all their sponsors. But G2 Kingwin and everything frustrated me. It might have even have been. I think it might have even have been pre G2.
Yeah.
When there was Gamers 2. They were Gamers 2 Kingwin, G2 Kingwin.
That
it's
really
like
frustrated me.
It's like goes back to like the 2010 like TSM Snapdragon shit, which is just like why. Anyway, I want to ask something else about this year. I noticed, Valve announced, I think yesterday, that they're doing all that recap stuff with Slacks. That is sort of the intention is to bring people in, and that's really cool for me because I remember a couple years back they did the beginner streams for TI. And we haven't done that in a while, and we are now getting this sort of recap of like, here's how Dota eSports has gone this year.
You had it last year.
Oh,
Totolini was flown in last year, and there was actually there was a newbie stream last year, except they didn't have commentators for it. Instead, it was information pop-ups which you could enable. So it was a less. They wanted to focus the show into one.
Right.
Instead of the two broadcasts, because the newbie stream was pretty half-assed. It's like a guy sitting with XSplit in like. Just on the side. It was very half-assed. But Slacks also announced on his Twitter shortly after that, like the last month or 2 or 3, like he's been working with Valve to create a lot of the filler content at TI before TI. So he's not running around like a chicken with his head cut off and just completely exhausted trying to make as much content as possible.
Right.
Like they've got a lot of this stuff pre-prepared, and I think that may be like a really good sign. Like I don't know what's going to happen in the show. I've been told absolutely nothing. And I think that this is at least a lot better, like a better sign that they're really thinking ahead of time. They're making more content beforehand, which means there is a content plan for the show. And last year it didn't really feel like that. Last year it kind of felt like it was PPD and his homies and Day 9 trying to babysit on a panel that looked very professional. Like it looked very, very professional, but it's to quote James Harding at this point, like the reason why he never cut his hair was because, and he didn't want to wear suits. Or if he did wear a suit, his hair was absolutely nuts because he's just like, I didn't want to ever get into the point where we go full professional. Like he could cut himself up, like his hair nice and neat, dress up in the suits, and then ask basic questions, and then just slowly move through step A, B, C, and D. But like we live in a different consumer world with esports. Like gaming consumers, like if you look at just the Twitch audience, people want to be able to connect, like be it emotionally, be it like verbally, like a streamer reads your chat and then responds to you. They want to be able to say like I like the guy who's on screen, and not I like the product that's on screen.
Right.
And that's a big difference. And I kind of felt like last TI, the games were amazing. Like the games were really good, apart from the final 3-0. But you lost that connection to the people that were on the panel. You were just waiting for the meme. You're waiting for the smack talk.
Right.
You're waiting for the salt drop. Like this was for me like what the last TI felt like, and I'm like, it could be better than this. It can be so much better than this. It can be so much more personal. If you just take the time out to make the content, and if you've got a 20, 25, $30 million prize pool, you should be able to take the time out and do it right, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah.
All I can think about is that Day 9 would be a great babysitter. Like a really good babysitter.
Day 9 would be a great storyteller. Like it'd be great to put your kids to sleep. Like,
yeah, true.
I'm not saying like Sean has this like nulling effect. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like he has these stories where you can completely lose track of time. Like I've spent a lot of time watching Sean just playing Hearthstone. I'm like, oh, that's 3 hours later. Crap. Because he's talking to you the entire time. He's telling things that happens in his life, in his mind. It's great.
Day 9, not human cough syrup, confirmed. It's not that he's putting you to sleep with that.
However, maybe that would have been the better choice for him. Like all these people in America who are doing like the sponsorship with chili sauce, right? Because everyone in America loves chili sauce. Why don't you do cough syrup? Why don't you actually have like Actually, no, we can go down some very dangerous roads.
I was about to say.
I like that you call it chili sauce, actually. Because, like, in America, they would call it hot sauce, right?
Yeah, hot sauce. It's chili. I like my sweet chili sauce. That's not too hot.
I do have a quick comment about like what you were saying about the sort of the personalization of the cast. Do you think that's something that's unique to Dota? Like, do you think Dota fans is that what Dota fans are like really looking for out of TI? Like, to me, coming in, it really seems like this sort of like pilgrimage for Dota fans where they'll travel from anywhere in the world to go to this event. And I think you make a good point about, you know, if this is going to be the pinnacle of esports that people are literally donating their own money for, maybe they do want a little bit less of that sort of ESPN style caster's desk, and they want these people that are going to reach out and appeal to the sort of Dota fan in you.
I think all esports wants that, and it's up to the organizers what they want to deliver, like the type of product they want to deliver. There is no one product that reigns above, but in my mind, it's all about emotional connection. It's all about the strength of brands.
Mm-hmm.
Like, brands last forever when they're remembered by their fans. So when you have a moment like TI where the prestige is so high, you want these memories to last. You want them to be highlighted. You want people to go out and make video clips of all this stuff and just say like it's a disaster to live forever. And you kind of have that connection. Like you don't just want to have a voice. Like when I watch Major League Baseball, and I think it's always the greatest example I have. Like whenever I watch that, like I'm over in America, I'm just watching on a night time, and I'm just watching I remember I was watching just a crappy game. Like it was just like a local game, and I'm like, I think I've heard this guy's voice before. Like this is the same type of thing, and I feel like I'm watching the same type of game. And then I came back the next night, and it was something like the World Championship was on. And I'm tuning in, and I'm like, oh, there's just more people here. But everything else remained exactly the same. And you're like, wait. Where's the difference here? Where's the connection? You realize that your casters became, like, the whole production became really, really generic. And it was we're just rolling with the punches. We're rolling through this all. a lot of meaning from what was there. And a lot of the meaning I feel comes from not making a generic script and just playing with the passions and saying, you know, we'll throw you a really awesome video, and then we want to throw to the panel who are going to have genuine reactions because they actually feel the emotions and they're going to express the emotions without saying A talks first, then passes to B, then passes to C. And then we're going to use this exact phrase after the video because this is what we plan to do. And I'm very happy that this has not happened with Dota, where we're forced to script things so hard. Like, you look at the behind the scenes stuff for League of Legends, and they showed how they structure all the show, structure all the content. Shox was even like talking about her interview that she was going to be doing, and her pre-show stuff and the phrasing she was going to have in just a conversation with her pre-show co-host. And she's working out down to the details of one word. And should I change this one word to be better? And while Riot may think like this is fantastic because people are taking the time and effort out to create such amazing detailed content, you gotta be careful not to lose the magic. And I think a lot of people, when they look at the League of Legends stuff, they'll realize that the magic is very fabricated. And it can work really well. Like, it can work really well, but when it doesn't, it's as bad as lip syncing being caught out. And that for me is like the best comparison. It's just like you've been caught out, you know it didn't work, and you just got to move on as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the the show when talking about sort of the comparison between casters, the authenticity you get in some scenes and perhaps the lack of it in others. I want to jump off something Keith noted in his question. He was talking about, you know, the fact that fans actually like put their money into TI, which is very different from anything else. And I want to ask, like, talking before we sort of talk about that system itself, I want to ask sort of like, this is one of the history questions. When, like, how much of a game changer was the compendium when it was introduced, right? Like, how crazy was that? And obviously, it's become insane now. But how much that changed Dota, basically?
It's one of the primary reasons Dota is what it is today. Like crowdfunding is how a lot of the brands actually was birthed in Dota. I think Beyond the Summit's one of the greatest examples of this. Like, they ran an Indiegogo and said, we need to raise money to build up our studio. What was the next big thing that really set them ahead is the Summit, which they could run small, but then they realized that we can do compendium work and have it look really awesome. Dream League was the same type of thing, where they were able to build up these really cool features inside of the compendium that put them on the map. And it was more than that in the early days, because it connected the third-party tournaments to viewers more than what is currently existing, because what currently exists is compendiums are TI exclusive. No one's released it for anything else. And while I've heard rumors that other people can launch a compendium, no one has done it. And maybe there's just no incentives to do it. But there's no connection anymore between the third parties and the general user base to look beyond, hey, a good game of Dota is just being played, to actually show them that there's a good game of Dota is being played, and this is where it fits into the tournament. And these are the people who are playing it. Put these faces out there. Like, the only time this really happens is when you come to TI and you've got the fantasy card system, and you've got the team logos which are inside the compendium. You've got the predictions which are going to be there. You can display the team logo inside the game. Like, you've got all these different things which exist for TI, but they don't exist for the rest of the year. Personally, when I heard the major system was going to be brought out, I'm like, oh, so we're going to have seasonal passes now. And these seasonal passes will allow us to hold on to a lot of the stuff that we actually get from the compendiums. The ability to actually, next season, I want to show the Liquid logo because I've become a fan of Liquid, as opposed to of virtus.pro. Like, why can't I display this type of stuff? Why is it only limited to TI? But I think that also drags back to what you were asking previously. Is like, how does TI why is TI still the biggest? Why should it be seen as something special? Because all these special things are now only for TI.
So it's kind of designed in a way to make that keep happening.
Yeah, it's like, will you still raise all the money you need for TI if you start pulling the crowdfunding across the entire year?
Right, right.
Another interesting question.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
much money? How much money are Dota people willing to spend
yeah.
or save until they hit August?
I mean, I could definitely say that one of the most fascinating things when I started working on this project was, I mean, quite obviously from the outside looking in, the compendium is just a fascinating thing. But I mean, I just wanted to get your perspective on. I mean, obviously, you talked about now compendiums are exclusively allowed to only be used for TI, but I mean, at least for me, it just seems so. It's obviously fascinating. Like you obviously you're like, wow, this is something that's truly special. I've never seen anything like this before. But then you get hit with the fact that Valve is keeping 70% of this compendium, and it just seems so uncomfortable to me. And from an outsider's perspective,
it's the memes. It's the memes that everyone jokes about. Like it's a 25-75 split, and not everything even then is in that split. That's the other funnier thing. Like, what's been on the battle pass, sure, but not everything goes to it. At least, like, I mean, you could buy player cards one year, and that money actually didn't go to the compendium. At least it was never said that it did. Now they've completely removed that, and it's only unlockables with battle pass levels. So maybe everything now actually does go to the prize pool, but there's that feeling of like animosity towards it. Like, you raise $25 million in prize pool, that means Valve just made themselves $75 million on one tournament, and that's not including the merchandise they'll sell, the tickets they'll sell, and any kind of other sponsorships they potentially could have sold, but they normally don't sell. At the same time, though, I kind of also understand why they take so much, because running an event of TI's size is not cheap. It really is not cheap.
yeah,
And $25 million to run TI would potentially be a lower part of the budget. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if to run the entire thing they would spend near $40 million. It would not surprise me. And they don't, and Valve is still a company that wants to make money at the end of the day and keep the rest of the Dota 2 financial year funded.
right.
And like, we talk so casually of like, oh yeah, they could remove like $10-11 million coming up into the next major system, but that still means there's another, like, there should be like $15 million available for the major or minor system, and that's not including everything else that may go into running it, or launching other things throughout the year. So yeah, I definitely, it is a cash cow. There's no doubt about that. I think the reaction to Valve taking 75% is always a little I'm very much in that boat as well. They could definitely give more, and maybe they do to ensure they go over 30 million next year. If we don't make it this year, like, that's an option open for them. But it's it's a sticky situation because you don't know the numbers, you don't know the stats, so you don't know exactly how much money Valve makes, and then you don't know how much to really hold against them. You only know the 75-25%.
I want to ask about, you mentioned, if we don't go over 30 million this year so we can get it next year. It's looking like we are hitting this point where, like, maybe we're reaching the peak amount of money that Dota fans are gonna give each year. I think last time we talked, we asked something about, like, are we reaching peak Dota in terms of player-based viewership? But it looks like we're hitting peak Dota in terms of what the prize pool can look like unless things change. Do you think we're actually, like, this is the cap to a certain extent? 23, 24, 25 mil?
It's it would be hard to go above it. And if it does go above it, then Valve have done something very smart to get more money out of the community. Because normally, like, with microtransactions, you got the guys who buy the small stuff, and then you got the whales, the ones who buy everything. And these are the ones who normally skyrocket things up. And I'm interested to see, like, how it does move forward as the player base drops. Because it's like, Dota isn't growing in size. I even good thing I'm actually at my computer. I can even look at this stuff. Like, the Dota numbers, like, we actually gained a little bit in the last 30 days, and that game was 214 players on average. So the peaks are still going down. The peaks are now hovering just over 700,000, and our average player base is 441. But if you look back during last TI, our average player base was 556,000. So you've effectively gone down by 100,000 people, and that means 100,000 people are not loading up the game to spend their money. So how much money did those 100,000 people represent? And if we lose another 100,000 people going into next TI, what will that represent? And there's always a peak around August. Like there was a increase of what 11% during last TI as everyone logs on. Does that mean we just get that burst of money that spends around August, or and it just sits there the rest of the year, or is that money actually lost when players disappear? That's why I find it very interesting when you have a group like Epic come out and say, "Hey, we're going to put $100 million into esports, into Fortnite Battle Royale," which definitely has advanced so quickly, so fast. But then you have to understand, like, is this going to be sustainable? Right. Like, the Battle Royale bubble had already popped on PUBG. How long does it take to pop on the others when someone else comes in and says, "Hey, I designed something better," and everybody shifts because the influencers which run their games, they're multi-game streamers, they're Twitch streamers. They move on to whatever is the hottest and the greatest.
Yeah.
So even if you do, like, you have someone like Ninja who has had a huge career made up just inside of Fortnite, or at least blown up inside of Fortnite, what stops him from going and doing some new media thing? Like he played at the PGI tournament. What stops him from being bought out to go to other games?
Mhm.
It's I find it very interesting with like how much money developers are willing to put in, how much money they think they're always going to get in, and Valve has a very safe way of doing it, right? It's a percentage base. We always make sure we get enough, and the rest of it, the excess, we put into the community.
It's interesting that you bring up Fortnite influencers. Remember last time we talked a little bit about your, the project you're working on, the game you want to work on, and talking about how kind of you want to build something that kind of works around the fact that we're moving towards this influencer-driven era of how games become popular. And it's interesting that even you note that, like, at the end of the day, an influencer can just move on to another game. And I'm wondering kind of how do you think these publishers can deal with that and make their games popular over the long term, or is it just like you've got a plan for flashes in the pans?
They just have to understand the industry more than anything else, and it's the entertainment industry is what they have to understand. So you balance the two, because your PR, it comes from the influences, it comes from events which happen, and your financial stability comes from the stability of keeping your player base high. So you need to entertain your player base, maintain the players that you do get, so don't break any of the systems that you do make, and then you also need to give everyone these interesting things that happen frequently. Now, frequently doesn't have to be like every week. You don't need to pump out something every week, but making a new season or new event that happens every 2 months, that's worthwhile pumping in, like, your dev team content, like creators, like, into just building like new content every 2 months, because to do so, it gives a streamer a reason to jump on and do something special, which normally increases their viewer count or can create hype or can create a clickbait title for their YouTube channel. Like, these are the type of things that you try to do. And then the more consistently you do this and the more interesting it is each time, the more your game is going to continuously be in the eyes of the general community, the more your player base builds up, and the more strength you then have to put more people into a content team and create interesting and different things. Or potentially the next evolution of your game. So I feel like that's the next transition that will come. And people just have to keep their finger on the pulse of gaming and understand which direction it is moving. Both genre type of game as well as content consuming type that people want.
Makes sense. So I want to ask one more historic-oriented TI question before we start moving to the last couple stuff. And I mentioned earlier that the first TI I really watched was TI 5, because that's when I started really paying attention to esports that weren't, esports at all, because I was watching fighting games, which were very adamantly not esports at the time. But I want to ask, because I hear this a lot, and Keith kind of mentioned it before, and the guy who's editing the Story of TI project is talked about it. I want to ask, like, was TI4 really that bad? Because that is the sense I get from everybody who talks to me about it.
TI4 finals was that bad.
Yeah.
Like, it was the same strategy played 3 times in a row that lost. And yeah. It was so predictable because we basically watched the same game 3 times for a team to lose. Yeah, that part was bad.
Yeah.
I feel too the production was a little bit off. Like, it was really cool because it was the first time we went into Key Arena. But there was very little of that extra content that was ready to go for TI. The panel didn't have a lot of supporting graphics. They didn't have a lot of things. The casters, we were kind of on a stage that was wobbling its ass off, so it was rather distracting. But we were also being chopped and changed around in our casting pairs, so we couldn't do our jobs correctly as well. And I always call that as the year of the year every caster tried to make a highlight clip out of everything, because a lot of the casters that were there were put into a situation they've never been in before, aka cast inside of a stadium. And it gives you that kind of I've got to step up kind of thing, which then just made the entire casting a screaming fest. Because it's the ultimate wow moment, where don't blame LD for doing it. I don't even think that was from TI4. But it's that type of moment where things got really oversold at TI. The prize money went through the roof, so then more pressure mounts on top to make everything feel even more special. And I see a couple of problems like that in production. Most people probably didn't really remember that, but most people say the greatest TIs I remember because the finals were terrific, and that final was dog shit.
Right.
And even the last TI, people were pretty disappointed at it because there wasn't a lot of feeling to it. People loved the fact that Kuro was able to win, but it was still a 3-0 in the grand final. It was an outdraft almost every time. It was an outplay almost every single time. You knew where we were going, and it was domination.
Right.
And it was clinical domination. So you can appreciate the great play, the great Dota that Liquid was playing, but you're also really, really sad that it wasn't LFY in the grand final instead of Newbie.
Right.
Because LFY probably stood a lot better chance against Liquid, but because Newbie beat LFY in the winners bracket final, that never happened. And then Newbie rocked up, and then you watch TrueSight, and Newbie sitting there going, "Oh yeah, we should have banned Prophet." And they know, they know themselves that they fucked it up.
Yeah.
And I kind of hope that gives them fire coming into this TI to not fuck it up. But they still made a grand final for TI, so you can't knock them for this.
Yeah.
But it happens with these China versus China matchups where you're this is not the result that should have happened. LFY should have been in the final. Liquid should have fought Newbie in the lower bracket final, dumpstered them, and then moved into the grand final, and we would have had the game that we all hoped we would have for the grand final. But because the grand final was a 3-0, you look back at the entire tournament and you go, that kind of fell a little down, right?
Yeah.
I guess that it's that last impression. As long as you finish strong, I think is the saying. And it's very much that for TI. That's why a lot of people say the greatest final was TI3. Because it finished so strong. Even though the 4 games before it were very one-sided one way or the other. It was that final game, the final moment, that's what it all mattered for. And we had those moments during TI7. There were terrific games that happened. Like the Team Empire versus TNC, I think it was. There was a fantastic VP game, the game that never ended that I got to cast. And just this great back and forward Dota. And they're the kind of games that you kind of wish you had at the grand final, because that's when the memories get made, because it's the championship match. I firmly believe this, that that there's actually almost a downside to be labeled to be put as the caster for the grand final, mainly because there's more tension in the lower bracket final to actually qualify for the grand final, because after that point it's I get the Aegis, I get the money, but you're still walking the path when you're in the lower bracket final, and it's normally got the better games. The lower bracket round 3 games are normally fantastic, and the winners bracket semifinals and normally 2 of the winners bracket quarterfinals are the best games you can tune in for. Like, it just works out that way every double elimination bracket, and then the grand final is normally a piece of shit. And you're like, damn it, I really wish I wasn't casting this. I really wish I cast that lower bracket matchup, and it's really sad sometimes. But I know, like the year I don't cast the TI grand final is going to be the year it's absolutely
Just the
amazing
best
again,
ever.
and I'll be like, fuck.
Do you at all think that the emphasis on the grand finals and that storyline has to do with TI being like this kind of pinnacle? I just feel like there's so much pressure put on this one event, and that could be part of it. Because I'm just getting this perspective from other people going, oh, here's the things that you need to know about TI, but don't worry about TI4, it was garbage. Or Kuroki finally won TI, but the match wasn't that great. Do you think some of the sort of like kind of the magic of that grand final has to do with the fact that this is really like a career-long thing for these players? It's not like it's just TI. Like, that's just kind of the beginning, middle, and end.
Sorry, I'm trying to actually like get to where your question was and all of that. I got lost halfway through it.
I just kind of want to know, like, from a very like kind of from the very base level, what is it that's so different about TI? What is it that's like that makes it about storylines and in the way that no other tournament does?
The funny thing is, there's not a lot. Like, TI runs very similarly to almost every other tournament that's out there. The primary difference that puts TI above it is Valve direct support. And Valve making a deal about this, because very rarely does Valve come out and speak about something. And when they do, the community listens, the world listens. And that sets TI apart, because it's the full Valve endorsement.
It's Papa Gaben giving us the blessing, the benediction.
Pretty much.
So before, sorry.
That's it.
Yeah. Before we come into the last 2 questions, I want to ask you, given that we're talking about grand finals so much here, you already mentioned that you like VP this year. Who do you want to see in grand finals to get the best possible match, to get that full 5 games tight back and forth?
Do you want VP Liquid?
Yeah.
VP Liquid would be the dream final at the moment, but I will definitely change that opinion at the end of the group stage. Because as I always like to say, when people say, hey, can you predict who's going to win TI and who's the big teams coming into this and who's going to perform the best? But you can never answer the last one. You can never answer who's going to perform the best until you actually reach TI. And then you see the meta that develops inside of it, because some of these teams are really fantastic on specific metas. And then the group stage can totally change everything around. And you're like, oh God, we're playing a completely different game of Dota that everyone wasn't ready for. And some teams will flourish in this, and other teams will struggle in this. So I always find that fascinating about every single TI that comes up. But for me, like, I think no matter what happens, I just to answer that question, I just think about the teams that perform really well and play the highest quality Dota, and they will never give up until the end. Liquid VP.
You heard it here first. TobiWan says China curse not in effect. China's broken.
If Liquid and VP go into the grand final, I think China will be very sad. TI will be very sad, because they'll be like, all those wonderful Chinese viewers, or bots, whichever one they are, down in China, they won't be tuning in. And all of the Chinese crowd, who I know is very strong in Vancouver, will probably be very disappointed. Yeah. And there's something about a crowd which is just looking just to rip the shreds out of the people on the other side. Yeah. When you've got those Americans going USA, USA, and it's a Russian team playing, and then you got the Chinese who are just like chanting out LGD or chanting out whatever, and you're like, they're so behind it. And I love that about Seattle. Like, they were maybe 1/20th of the stadium, right, but they sounded like 50% of it, and that's the kind of feeling that, at least as a commentator, and I think to create that environment, the crowd environment. Like that's what you want to have. It's probably one of the primary reasons why tournament organizers used to, now the government kind of makes things difficult, love to go to Manila, love to go to the Philippines. Because these guys, they just love their Dota. They don't care which country it's from, and you got 100% crowd just going nuts for high quality Dota. And that's the dream. That's why I kind of want to bring it back, bring TI. I say back to Europe. It was there in Germany for TI1, but to bring it to a huge stadium in Europe, have everybody come over, and you'll get such a beautiful mix that you will have fans for every single team and every single player that's there, and none of it will be heavily biased.
Yeah.
That's the dream TI for me.
I love that note about the Chinese crowd, actually, Toby. I was doing a little bit of work on the eHome Mega Creeps comeback video a while back. I was blown away by how loud the eHome fans were in that stadium.
Yep.
I couldn't believe it. Because I'm like, this is in Seattle, right?
You also have to think about where the mics are positioned.
That's fair. But...
And it's like, oh, have we got 4 mics facing the Chinese crowd? Oh, what a shame.
It was pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know the hilarious thing is too, like at a lot of events, sometimes the only crowd audio you get comes from the bleed effect of a caster's microphone.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really sad too, because like in more and more events, casters have been put backstage. Actually, at ESL one Hamburg, we weren't even inside the stadium.
Oh.
We were in a box that was meant to be the VIP area. It was a glass box, which was meant to be a chill area for people. And we were put out there. The casters in the panel weren't even in the stadium.
Wow.
We're like, oh,
I feel like
no bleed effect. Hope the mics are set up right.
I feel like even just as casting, you lose a lot. I mean, maybe it's distracting to be in the middle there, but I bring us back to fighting games. I'm a monster.
You want to be in the crowd. Like it's one of these things that I actually started making as a stipulation for events that I attended. Birmingham, I think, was actually one of the saddest for me. Because we were casting and we were backstage, and the way audio is set up at an event, the wall comes down of audio and then goes out to the crowd. So the players should never hear this huge bass. They should never hear this reverb, and they normally don't even hear the bounce back of the sound. And when you're sitting behind one of these teams as a commentator, it's the huge sound barrier. Like it's the cone of silence. We've gone get smart, and you don't hear anything, you don't feel anything. And when a crowd's reacting to a pick or to something or to a play, you don't feel what's happening with the crowd, and you're like, it's very, very like disorientating. And it's difficult to put in a performance where people are expecting a LAN performance, because a LAN performance, you normally you can't reach it yourself. A real LAN performance, you can't reach it yourself as a caster. You need the crowd to be there with you. You need them to lift you up, to have that hype. Like I started doing it at TI, where I got the entire crowd to do this Mexican wave, because I thought the crowd felt a little sluggish, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna pick up the energy in this room somehow, and I started a Mexican wave. Hilarious thing was, Casey was then doing a bit about 2 minutes later, and her whole plan was to start a Mexican wave. and I sent her a DM on Twitter saying, "Oops, sorry, that was me."
Oh no.
Because the wave was going, and she's like, "We can start a wave, can't we?" I'm like, "There's one
behind you right
yeah.
now." I have one more question I want to ask, because this kind of touches on exactly what we're talking about now. You know, being in that crowd, being with those people. Just the last thing I want to ask before we got to let you go is, you know, how would you describe the TI experience to somebody who's never been, to being in a stadium, to being among Dota fans watching the best Dota, the most exciting Dota? What is that experience?
It's adrenaline rush for nerds. Because how many times do you just sit there and you watch, like, and you imagine going down to a bar, like just your local bar, and like these are guys who will go nuts for football. And you're like, oh great, and there's like, hey, can we just turn on like the International, and you just want to get up and scream, and like normally that's Like that's like when something really awesome happens, and if you feel accepted to do this, it really creates this atmosphere. It's like, oh, I can actually do this. Like, and people understand why I'm doing this, and it creates this energy, this vibe, this rhythm that just keeps rising and rising and rising as people feel more and more comfortable, more and more at home, because everyone else talks their language. I always love saying like different games speak different languages, and when you're in a room where everyone's speaking the same language, like it's just so easy to get on. And that's what it is when you come to an esports event. When you come to a place where everyone speaks the same language as you, doesn't matter where they're from in the world, you can just lean over to the seat next to you and say, "Hey, man, do you understand why the Bloodseeker just went blade mail?" Like, and you spark a conversation instantly. These are the type of things that you can do, and I find it very I find it very cool as a caster, and it's my adrenaline rush is like that type of conversation about like blade mail with Bloodseeker. Like I can't take it to another level when I get to cast, and I can feel the crowd sharing the same emotion I'm sharing, and then we kind of ride the emotional roller coaster that is these events, and it's like I feel what they feel, and then I want to take them to another level. I can make them feel even more. Uh, and these are when you create moments that you never want to like ever want to forget. And I hope the crowd never forgets it either, because the players will rise with you, and they'll make an unbelievable play. And because everybody in that arena has just been feeling this build up, this build up, this build up, and then you hit that point where it's like, that's what I was looking for. That's the ultimate climax. Uh, you never forget that point, like when it happens. And if you get one or two of those magical moments at an event, you already count your lucky stars. Every caster wants to cast the best series because you want that moment, and I want those series because I want to do that moment justice, uh, and make sure the crowd never forgets.
All right. Well, we certainly here hope you get the best moments and the best games. In the coming weeks, in the coming month. I'm sure you're a busy man. You got to pack. So thanks so much for taking the time, Toby. Hopefully we get you back next time. We can talk a little bit more about the about the other upcoming projects you're working on. But thanks so much for talking to us about TI this morning for us.
Not a problem.
All right. Have a great one, and talk to you again very soon, I'm sure.
Wow. I was on a ride right there, man.
That was I was
we were talking. It was a meta ride because we were talking about the ride that everyone's on. But like I was on it. I don't know how.
It's always fun hearing people describe these kind of events, because I think back to when I went to EVO for the first time a couple years back, and it feels similar to an extent, right? It's different because it's a different game and the vibe is different, right? With EVO, you have the casters walking in the crowd. You have, it's not quite the same because it's 1v1, but there is this sense of like belonging that feels really exciting, I think, and wanting to see the absolute pinnacle of play with everybody next to you and being able to be excited in the way you want to be and you usually can't. I think that's something that's shared across these events, but certainly obviously TI has, it's that for Dota, and that's it's something unbelievable in and of itself, and it's really cool that I think that perspective on it from the casting desk is super exciting, and I like hearing that Toby wants to be, in the mix with everybody. That's something that I feel like you might not hear from some games casting talents. No shots being fired, I promise.
Wow. But yeah, I've experienced it as well. I mean, in the crowd at BlizzCon, people just being like, "Hey, why are they picking that character or whatever?" It's awesome. Like it feels awesome to just be able to chat like that with somebody else when normally it would be something resigned to Twitch chat or forums or Reddit or whatever, to be able to in person be like, why'd they pick that Diablo? And being able to figure that out with someone.
The answer is because they wanted to hit a sweet APOC, right?
Yeah, they want to do the Zeratul Diablo combo.
Just a really cool APOC. That's why. That's the only reason you picked Diablo. I mean, you picked Diablo because he's top tier right now, but you picked Diablo because you want a sweet APOC. Josh, do you want to take us out or should I?
Yeah, I'm taking us out.
Do it, baby. Bring it out of here.
Kicking the doors open. This has been quite an enlightening podcast. It was cool to talk TI with Toby, and it was great to have him on. Honestly, great conversationalist.
Always, as always. Hopefully we can have him on again. He can join the 3-peat club.
Oh yeah, this is the second appearance, so you can go back and check out the previous one if you want.
Yep.
But
Also a great chat.
yeah, a wonderful chat. But for myself, Josh, and Daniel Rosen,
Hello.
and like
Or
I said,
goodbye.
limited edition participant Keith Capsick.
Nothing for Colin McNeil. We give nothing to Colin McNeil.
He's gone.
I give him nothing and take from him everything as I close the Score Esports podcast. Thanks again, guys. See you next time.